Well, now, hours before deadline, a €10 billion deal is in place to save Cyprus from financial meltdown. But although small savers are protected, the last-minute bailout does mean the country's second-largest bank will be wound down, major investors paying the biggest cost, many of them Russians. Other banks will finally reopen tomorrow with controls in force to prevent a flight of cash. From Cyprus tonight, our economics editor Faisal Islam has this report.
Today is the day that Cyprus remembers Greece's defiant independence with a huge march. But the feeling here is of rotten dependence on an EU with uncertain motives and questionable competence. I was stopped by a teacher whose best friend's business has collapsed in the drought of cash and who says she's going to lose her job too as a result of the Troika plan for cuts. This is normally a day of celebration in Cyprus.
Not anymore, I'm afraid. The people of Cyprus have already realized that tomorrow is going to be completely different. From a country of prosperity, we are going to be the beggars of Europe.
This morning, the Archbishop, who pledged to mortgage the Orthodox Church's land, led the prayers for this troubled country's future. After a 3 a.m. deal to keep Cyprus in the Eurozone, Cypriots on the streets of Nicosia did not queue up at their cash machines, but there was a sense of impending doom.
Today is a day of sadness. Everyone is losing their money in the banks. They're coming and taking the money from our banks without our say-so. Today they're doing it to us. Tomorrow they'll be doing it to other countries.
It's Greek National Independence Day celebrated with a march of teenagers, but their futures will be impacted by decisions made in Brussels yesterday, and many here in Cyprus blame the bailout of Greece and the impact on the Cypriot economy for their problems. Last night, according to local media, the Cypriot president made a series of high-wire threats, including resignation and a referendum to the EU and IMF. This was topped off by a suggestion he'd freeze the cheap transfer of Greek subsidiaries of Cypriot banks with billions of deposits to Piraeus Bank in Greece. This was supposed to be a firewall for the EU to stop the Cyprus crisis infecting the Greek banking system, but these were the very parts of the Cypriot banking system that caused the crisis in the first place. They lost €4 billion in the EU-brokered default of Greek government debt last year. The agreement reached with the European Union is a very temporary sticking plaster. The EU now promises to protect all depositors with less than €100,000, in keeping with EU principles that they forgot about last week. The second biggest bank, Popular or Laiki Bank, is wound down, with its large depositors suffering hefty losses. The largest institution, the Bank of Cyprus, has a stay of execution, but again larger depositors are to be hit. And to top it off at first, the return of controls on capital to stop excessive withdrawals from the island's remaining banks. And this will impact on the green line separating the two Cypruses. This is a de facto international border, and the deal agreed 2,000 miles away in Brussels means that capital controls will have to be enforced here. Basically, people with too many euros, thousands of euros, will be searched and stopped. That's an anathema to how the Eurozone should work. It's an anathema to how the European Union should work. And it basically means that a euro in Cyprus is not worth the same as a euro elsewhere. In Limassol on the coast, a bank branch was attacked with a Molotov cocktail just after the deal was done. Elsewhere in this town, many Russian investors are attempting to pull their investments. In Moscow, Russian President Medvedev, inspired by the words of Lenin, said it was the stealing of what has already been stolen.
If you have more than €100,000 in the bank, in a single bank, then go to that bank, withdraw anything over 100,000 and open another account in another bank.
And is the single currency intact today?
Well, the single currency is very badly bruised. Its reputation has been destroyed. It's still functioning as a single currency, but it's under threat not to function as a single currency if capital controls are imposed.
Cypriot President Anastasiades addressed his people tonight on the deal. Capital controls will be temporary. Some banks will reopen tomorrow. The problem, the hit to the economy from the banking heart attack, for which the EU should probably return the Nobel Prize, has made this crisis even harder to solve. They've only bought a few weeks of time.
To Faisal live in Cyprus. Faisal, the president has just spoken. What's he said?
Yes, he said quite an emotional speech. He said that this is a battle for our children and the future, and today we're starting efforts on reconstruction. He said the government's committed to stand by the people who will suffer. He said that Cyprus will bring in criminal investigators with direct orders to find those responsible and deliver justice. And he finished by saying, let's turn the crisis into an opportunity for a fresh start. But it's going to be rather difficult because this does seem like a sticking plaster that will last a few weeks rather than a fundamental solution to this problem.
And will it affect the rest of the Eurozone?
Yeah, well, we had an unfortunate incident with the president of the Eurozone, the Dutch Finance Minister, Jeroen Dijsselbloem, who suggested in an interview with the FT and Reuters that Cyprus was in fact a new model for how to deal with the crisis elsewhere. This caused a reaction in markets, deep concern everywhere, and he then retracted the comments or denied that he'd said specifically that it was a model or a template. Certainly shows that the lack of, there may be a certain lack of competence in how this crisis is being dealt with, not just in places like Cyprus, but at the very top of the Eurozone. John.
Faisal Islam live in Nicosia. And on the stock market, fears that the Cyprus deal could set a precedent for future bailouts have spooked investors. The index of 100 leading shares fell just over 14 points, a fall of 0.22%.